I'm excited to welcome Mr. Mike Oakes, Senior Pre-Sales Engineer at Atempo. Mike, it's great to have you on.
Hey, David, it's great to be here.
Absolutely, yeah. Take it away. Tell us about Atempo.
All right. So, well, I want to first thank you and the team for inviting us again here today. Also, I know people are watching. Hope you guys are getting some good insight out of these sessions on your systems and what you can do from a data storage capacity standpoint. So, with that being said, as David mentioned, my name is Mike Oakes. Real quickly, I'm a solutions architect with Atempo. Been in the industry of data protection, preservation, and storage close to 35 years now. And when I do these, what I like to do is a little bit about Atempo, so you know who we are. And then we're going to follow it up by a closer look at how Myria by Atempo can help aid in crafting a storage solution strategy. So real quickly, who's Atempo, right? So Atempo, we've been around, almost 30 years now. So we've been around and we bring to bear experience in the field of data preservation, protection, management. You see by the slide, 2,000 customers and 27 years of experience and 200 employees worldwide. We're well north on both of those. And we enable organizations to preserve their data ecosystems, regardless of that data set size, the organization size, geographical location. And our solution is designed to protect, store, facilitate movement, provide easily searchable functionality, quick retrieval of data. And just a quick note on our solutions, we're a software-based solution. You can reuse your own hardware, repurpose what you have. It's nothing large. When I do these talks, I'm talking about, and you can use VMs, you can use base metal servers, one U server, 2 CPUs, some cores, and some memory. And we help size those. We have sizing guides we help our partners with. So that being said, crafting a storage strategy, more precisely a comprehensive storage strategy for large petascale environments, it requires consideration of several key factors, as well as an appliance tool or tool sets or suite of tools in that appliance to address some key areas. And some of them we have here, right? So, scalable capacity management, right? All organizations hope to grow. Small ones become large, large ones become Fortune 500. You need to be able to change a solution. Your solutions need to be adaptable, but also adaptable with the appliances you're talking to, and that may be hybrid infrastructures, dissimilar infrastructures that don't talk to each other. A NASME doesn't talk to cloud natively. GPFS doesn't talk to Lustre natively. So how do you wrap all those storage solutions, and how do you do it in a cohesive manner, not impacting, the user experience, but meeting the SLAs and requirements of the organizations? And data availability. Nothing's worse than crafting a solution, especially from a DR and archive standpoint, and then when you go to get the data, you can't get it back, or something's gone wrong. So you need a solution that can work from the entire gambit of scenarios you're looking at, the entire gambit of solutions and SLAs you need to meet. Air gap protection we put in here, it's kind of like the last gasp, right? The last protection, right? If everything else has failed, something put out air gap, tape in a vault. Think of it as your last data protection standpoint. But also coupled within these requirements is the ability to do data migration reliably, right? Reliably move all ACLs, all permissions, POSIX, whatever that file system structure happens to be, to the new target, without, again, impacting that user experience, all while you maybe still be running backups and archives. So not impacting that window of vulnerability, not increasing that window of vulnerability by overtaxing something, overtaxing the network. So making sure you have a complete infrastructure in place. The last one is flexibility and scalability. A lot of times people ask me why. Oh, if you think about the changes in architecture, an appliance needs to be flexible. New products or new models or new modalities come down the pike. The product needs to be able to adapt to it, right? You need to be able to call it and use it when you need to. So a flexible modular designed appliance or software appliance to take advantage of those new feature sets, but also scalable. As I mentioned earlier, organizations want to change, right? They want to grow. Every organization wants to get bigger, right? Which means your workflow is going to change. You need to be able to scale up your solution as need be. The solution from Atempo with Myria, once you have the software and you've purchased a license and the workflow you're in, the notion of having things that move data, we call them agents or data movers. Those come from us at no extra cost. Once you've purchased the software, you can have 100, you can have 101. The choice is yours on how many you put in place. So there's no extra cost from us on that standpoint. So real quickly, how does Miri help craft that storage strategy? Or basically, Miri is enabling several workflows with a single appliance. You see a couple here on the screen. We call these our 4 pillars. So the one at the 12 o'clock, the one at the 6 o'clock position, Miri for backup, Miri for archiving. These are basically what we've been doing for 30 years, data preservation, data protection. As I said, things change over time, right? We've evolved our product. We've added in, as you see at the 9 o'clock position, Miri for data moving. We did this some years back. We did this because people need to be able to replicate, sync, copy data, drag and drop, replicate 2 file systems or portions thereof a file system to a different location. So this you can enable, again, under the hood with Miriam. Coupled with, you see Miri for migration at the right. The difference between the migration and the other 3, think of the other 3 as something you're licensing for, software, capacity, and, you're buying support year after year. Miri for migration is a little different. It's an offering where you turn it on when needed. You buy a license for it, a synchronization license, and it's basically time-based. The capacity of what you're moving, but time-based. Use it for, however long it needs, 3, 6 months. And then when you're done, you can shut it down. So you don't have to pay extra costs for the tool. Use it when you need, shut it off when you're done. License expires, you move on. So 3 to the left, think of as perpetual, subscription-based. 1 to the right, think of time-based. There's one other coming, and it's the 5th, I'm going to call it the 5th pillar. We're bringing in analytics later this year, and we did this intentionally because from our standpoint, to completely manage your data environment, you have to understand that architecture, that data landscape. So having an analytics package in the product, you're not going to pay an extra license for it. There's not an extra fee. We're including it. We think it's that important to make sure you have that tool in your tool bag and not having to go out and pay an extra fee for it. So real quickly, how do we get there? I'm going to use this quick example, and I have a couple of them here, but think about starting small, right? Have a scale out NAS. In this case, you need to do something, maybe backup. Maybe your SLA is you need to do a full backup with incrementals, every day, and a full backup once a month or once a quarter or once a year. Flexibility in the tool. You can automate all of this. You can also, it's all GUI driven. You can use CLI and API if you so choose. You have a REST API you can program to. But also you're pushing it out to tape with air gap security, right? There's also a notion, and I tell people a lot of times when I do these, I always want more than 1 copy of my data when I'm backing it up or archiving it, because nothing's going to be worse when I go to get that data, something's happened to it. So we have the notion of, we call storage manager containers, or think of it as a bucket. And a bucket's just a location where I'm putting data. I can do multiple copies. I can do 2 copies to tape in 2 different storage buckets or storage manager containers. Why is this important? Because I also can assign independent hashes to them, anything from an MD5 to a SHA something. And this becomes relevant because if you think about 2 different locations, they could give them both an MD5 with independent calculation. They're also independently stored within our database. And when we go to pull one back, and this goes to that data availability and security we're going to talk about in a second, but this goes to, if for some reason the hash doesn't match storage manager A, we can turn around and pull that data from storage manager B and give it out to the user that's requesting or the application that's requiring it. So we don't impact the user experience. We've kept the data intact. We've checked it on a restore. And then inside the logs, and we'll flag, hey, this area had an issue with this file. Then then you can go take a look and we can see what's wrong with it. But it's, again, always providing that data, building that strategy where your users aren't waiting on your data is always available. So with that, things grow over time, right? Small business want to become medium, want to become large, and then Fortune 500. So in this one, what you see is you have that same scale out NAS. I may be going to tape, but I've had more NASs or some other type of appliances come online in my environment. You can facilitate backup to all of those. It's just a matter of having the right capacity license for your backup. You don't have to change any software. There's nothing else to add unless you want to add some more data movers because they're in distant locations and you want to encrypt data, which is important for security, right, and protection of data. We can encrypt the data. If you put data movers in 2 different locations, we'll encrypt the data for you. We'll encrypt it as we pick it up off the storage on source, send it over the wire encrypted, decrypt it just before we apply it down to the other side on the target. But there's also a notion of another type of protection in here. And it comes with some of our tool sets that come natively within the product. And this one's called SnapStore. Now, what SnapStore allows you to do is you can take that scale out NAS to the left, and maybe that one at the right at the 1 or 2 o'clock position. You want to use that as a backup, but more importantly, you want to use it as an online or DR backup, where I can run on it in the case of my scale-out NAS fails or my primary production storage fails. Now, we can do this because of some features under the hood. If we can talk to the APIs of these NASs or the file system on both sides, what we can do is we can use something called Snapshot and FastScan. Everybody kind of knows what Snapshot is. But what we do is with the FastScan technology, we can take a snapshot and we'll lock it the first time. We'll validate it the first time it's used for a backup or some other type of operation. And once it's validated moving forward, we'll just take another snapshot and have the appliance give us a differential change list, a snap diff, so to speak. And we'll use that to facilitate movement. Now, when in the case of a SnapStore backup, what we'll do on the target is we'll take that entire data set from the source and lay it down exactly like it looks onto the target. And then we'll use snapshotting with SnapStore every time we do an incremental to store any kind of changes. So you get your version changes in a snapshot, your latest is on the file system. In the case of some type of accident, nefarious act or whatever, when the production goes offline, you have to point your users to that copy. You can start running on it. And oh, by the way, you can repopulate with it, including with time navigation back to a particular point in time, back to the source once it's been reconstituted, back to that production NAS. So mixed with that, things change over time, right? My NAS isn't fast enough anymore. I need to think about using something like a parallel file system. In this case, we're talking about GPFS. Now, we're still doing all of our backups to meet our SLAs, but we need to get that data off that scale-out NAS onto that GPFS so we can populate it, basically, so we can use it in our production. So within Myria, with Myria for migration, we can do that. You can get very granular and move a single file or directory or everything, all depending on how deep you want to go and what you need to migrate. The important thing is here, we can migrate the data. You can continue protecting your data with your backups. And think of it just like almost like doing a backup. We can use FastScan and Snapshot. We can then move all that data to the GPFS file system. You can then turn around and shut it down or shut down the NAS when you're done. And basically turn around and say, you know what? Due to my SLAs and my policies, I need to have that GPS file system backed up. And I'm going to back it up, say, to, a tape. I'll copy the tape and a copy to something on disk. So you're very flexible, right? You can meet those SLA requirements for your organization. Now, coupled with that, we all know cloud came down the pike a little while ago, right? So how do we use it? Whether it be on-prem or in the cloud. I should say on-prem or public. So in this case, we're showing AWS here. You could use AWS, Azure, something with Swift, something S3 based, choice is yours, GCP, as a target. So I could have a target on tape. I can do a target in cloud. 2 different storage manager containers I talked about before with 2 independent storage hashes, right? Protect my data, but also have it in different locations for access. So real quickly, a lot of times people get into an area where they need to replicate data, whether, with the COVID now that's going on, people are working remotely, maybe they need to share data in distant locations. Maybe I just want to have, a replicated copy somewhere else for people to work on, to collaborate, maybe New York and London, different parts of the world or maybe different parts of the city. So with the migration feature, with the synchronization and replication feature in Myria, you can also do that, all while you're still maintaining your SLAs for backup. But I can actually sync data between this GPFS file system and some other type of, parallel file system, or could actually be syncing to some other type of NAS. We can take those dissimilar architectures and use them, again, in a heterogeneous workflow to best meet those requirements of a particular organization. But coupled with that, what happens is maybe I need now bring in archive. This becomes important as companies age too, because I don't need to keep things on my storage that's 9 months old maybe. That's our business. Maybe the business policy is after 9 months, it's not really touched. but it's still sitting on our primary storage. Why? Why am I wasting that space? Why not set up some policy to say, anything younger than 9 months, back up. Or anything that has been touched within 9 months, go ahead and back it up. Anything that hasn't been touched, let's long-term preservation it. Let's put it to some type of archive. In this case, we're representing here Google or Azure, but it could be any one of those storage models we're talking about. Right? So I can say at 9 months, something hasn't been touched, archive that file. Now maybe I want to leave it on that source storage for another month, or maybe I decide, by policy, once it's archived, maybe I make 1 copy, maybe I make 2. Again, I always prefer 2. Then delete it from my source storage. Free up that space. Or maybe tier it down. Maybe go from tier 1 to tier 2, and then from tier 2 out to cloud later. You can set those policies up for which to match your business needs. And then finally, right, what's next? I mean, nobody really can say, and I can't either, what's next, what's coming down the pike in the next couple of years. But what you need to know is the way Myria is designed, right? Flexible and adaptable architecture. Add appliances as you need to, data movers at no cost from us, but also a flexible solution. We can call them those new storage models or modalities without having to do a complete reinstall of software, a complete change of my infrastructure, right? So basically you can change to meet the business needs whenever and wherever they reside. So real quickly, I'm bringing this one back up for a second, these 4 pillars, and it's, basically the reason why I did this, if you take a look from the perspective of the industry, Gartner recently recognized Myria from Atempo was listed one of the representative vendors for data management and services technology. And why? It's because Myria is a highly performant and a scalable platform that can adapt and grow as workflows and environments grow. These 4 pillars, and the 5th one I talked about was analytics, facilitate those type of data movement transactions, data preservation and protect, and that storage strategy we're talking about, archive, backup. How do I manage legacy storage that's going offline, right, with migration or collapsing infrastructures? How do I do that seamlessly, but not impacting the user experience, right? Not impacting workflow, but keeping that window of vulnerability as limited as small as possible for my backup data, for my archive data. That's what Myria brings to the table for crafting a storage solution. So that being said, you're probably asking yourself, with all that stuff I just threw at you, right, why should I think about using Myria from Atempo? And it comes down to a couple key things, right? So being able to manage dissimilar infrastructures that are geographically dispersed. As I mentioned earlier, NetApp doesn't natively talk to Isilon, which doesn't natively talk to Cumulus, which doesn't natively talk to GPFS, right? So how do you take into account all of those different appliances, platform operating systems, and use those homogeneous or dissimilar systems in a heterogeneous environment to meet my needs for backup, for archive, for storage, storage preservation, data protection, but also the ability to migrate when things are legacy, right? They've reached their end of life. I need to get off this particular piece of storage. I want to get to something bigger, faster, cheaper, right? More robust. So being able to use the same tool to migrate that data, collapsing infrastructures. We talked about data preservation and recovery, a little bit about security in the hashes. Also something we mentioned, there's full audit logging within the appliance, right? So audit logging for anything that touches data, we're going to log. Now, a lot of people just want this for the ability to, know what's going on when and where, but you need it for, God forbid, some type of nefarious act happens. You need some type of forensics, or a file's disappeared and nobody knows why. Well, you can go and take a look. This particular user deleted this particular file at this particular date, right? So there's no ambiguity. You've known what happened within your infrastructure. And then we also discussed, SnapStore a little bit, and of course, air gap protection. But also, something we bring to the table a little bit different than others is that fast scan technology we're talking about, being able to do incremental snapshots with the fast scan technology. This goes, again, to reducing that window of vulnerability, protecting your data. The quicker my data is backed up, the quicker I'm protected. Coupled with, of course, we're going to bring analytics in later this year. Again, understanding your data landscape is crucial to understanding how you manage your entire environment. And it's a tool we wanted to add at no cost to our partners within Myria. And the last one here, nothing is worse than having an incident happen and for some reason you can't get to your data. Maybe your tape drives are offline or passwords have changed within your bucket. You don't know why you can't open your cloud bucket for some reason. You need an organization that's standing behind you with this, right? So at Atempo, we offer different models of support, 5x9 and 7x24. We have basically organizations placed throughout the world to help and back you up when needed. So we have them in Europe, the United States, and Asia. Basically, that, as it says there, the 24/7 sun never sets support and services mentality. And lastly, the last thing you're looking at here, right, is you probably ask yourself again, does it fit my workflow? I have a particular workflow. So, Myria was specifically designed to address the unstructured data market. And in most verticals today, that's education to research, life sciences you see on the screen here, healthcare, government, doesn't matter, local, state, federal, they're all pretty much, well, they have different regulations, of course, from a security standpoint, but also the major industries, right? They all have need to manage data sets, small and large, and they're growing over time. Nothing that we've seen in the industry is indicating any kind of shrinkage in data set sizes, right? And they need to be able to do that across dissimilar architectures. I don't know many organizations that put their faith in just one platform. So there's a mixture of homogeneous platforms, but they need to have those architectures work, or you need to have that architecture work more, so to speak, in a heterogeneous workflow. So being able to use the best of breed when and where needed, this is what Myria enables for our partners and our customers, taking dissimilar architectures or islands of storage, so to speak, and enabling and transforming them into a seamless heterogeneous workflow. And that goes to the heart, right, of allowing organizations to take full advantage of their current storage assets wherever and wherever they reside, making sure that data is constantly available, protected for the users for now and for later when it may be recalled. Now, that's how you start crafting a comprehensive storage strategy. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to David for any questions or comments. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, great presentation, Mike. We do have some questions for you, and we've got some questions for the audience as well here in the form of polls. So I'm going to bring up our first poll for everyone out there. I want to call your attention to the poll on the screen that says, what is the volume of your Petabyte-Scale data set? And of course, we appreciate your feedback on that poll. And then we'll move on to one other poll while we take our questions here. So let's see. First question that came in, I see they're asking, can Myria support or work with Oracle RAC databases?
It depends if we're talking about just backing up the data or reconstitute an instance of the database. Again, we're for an unstructured data market, so depending on what the workflow is, most of the time, yes, but I'd have to understand more about the use case.
Got it. Okay. And then let's see, another question here I wanted to ask you is about, does Myria by Atempo have any size or scaling limitations?
Not that we've figured out yet. I mean, when I say we can scale data movers, 1 to 100, you could go harder than that. We do archives and backups in the hundreds of petabytes range already, pushing higher, so we have found no limit yet.
Nice. I like that. Let's see, another question here. How do we automatically archive cold data in complete security?
So when they say complete security, I'm going to say that's a double-edged sword for a second. So you can set by policy, I want to archive a specific set of data that meets some time requirement, we'll say. You can also do that. Maybe you want it encrypted. We can encrypt it in flight, as well as if the storage supports encryption at rest, we can key off of that. If not, what you can do is give us some type of encryption key, and you want your data encrypted with it at rest, and we'll also encrypt it at rest to protect it there.
Got it. Okay. Good deal. I want to go ahead and move on now to our next poll for everyone out there on the screen that says, oh, did I lose it? Here we go. What additional information would you like about the Atempo solution? And I'll leave that up there for everyone to respond to as well. We appreciate your feedback. Let's see, going on here to the Q&A, next question. They're asking, as my workflow changes, do I need to reconfigure or change the Myria software?
No, the software comes straight out of the box with all those feature sets I was talking about. You just have to license what you need to do. If you need to add archive in, you just have to add an archive license. If you need to add migration, you add the migration license. But there's no reconfiguration you have to do with the software.
That's good to know. Yeah, because things are changing all the time. You don't want to have to reconfigure
Exactly.
the software. So good to know. Let's see. Next question: can you back up to multiple targets as a single task with Miria?
Yes. So kind of those buckets I was talking about before, storage manager containers, you can put 1 to 20, and what they'll do is we'll start up a job and we'll back up to each one of those buckets.
Got it. And I like this question here from Chris. He's asking if you can kind of share some feedback from, current customers. Like, how has this helped them to make their storage strategy or storage infrastructure, more efficient?
So in a couple ways. So think about it from the ability to offload, we'll say your production storage, right? So being able to actually look and say, I have things that are of a certain age. I don't want them on production. I can free up that space for something else to be used. Plus, with the tools that we bring underneath the hood, backing up data without having to walk file systems with the fast scan and snapshotting technology, greatly, one, I mentioned this earlier, reduces that window of vulnerability so the customer's data or the user's data is protected. But also on the flip side, what you can do is you can enable self-archiving and self-backing up for users. You can set up users. We integrate with AD. Admins, of course, have to give them access to that particular piece of storage or archive that they're talking to. But what this allows you to do is even go into the cloud and reverse cloud as well, is you can have users self-archive, self-back up. So you don't have to have whole staffs that are dedicated just to that. But there's an approval process that comes into play too with this. And it really becomes into play with egress charges coming out of the cloud. Last thing you want to do is give people access to data in the cloud for their archive and backup, and they think they're only pulling back a file or two, and they're pulling back 500 terabytes or 20, a petabyte accidentally because they clicked on the wrong thing. This approval process says, hey, by the way, this user, and it goes to a group of admins, is requesting to pull this data from this location. Does they have access to do this, or do they not have access? And the admins can say, yeah, that's fine, that's known, or no, wait a minute, they're pulling back 500 terabytes. That's going to destroy our budget for this month on our egress charges. Let's go figure out what they're doing, and don't give them access just yet, so deny that transaction. So you can build some pretty interesting workflows then to help facilitate and offload IT resources.
Very cool. And then I know we're running out of time here in our Q&A slot or session, but kind of final question I wanted to ask you, Mike, is I know you said this is an all-software solution. Like, what's the easiest way to get started with this?
So if you go just to www.atempo.com, you can get a hold of myself or one of our engineers. You can find all of our white papers, all the contact information, more about our products and what they can do. You also can request a demo or a POC, and the software comes with a 15-day temp license that you can try it out with all the features enabled.
Very cool. I like that. 15-day license, all the features enabled. Try it out. See it for yourself. Mike, it's been great having you on the Ecocast today. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, David. Always glad to be here.